people who use fire not to illuminate, but to intimidate, to destroy. Tonight's Nightlight is about three young men who drove toward that kind of fire anyway, and about the light that they carried with them. 62 years ago today, the families of three young men began to wonder why they hadn't come home. The night before, those three young men had climbed into a blue station wagon headed toward Meridian, Mississippi. They knew where they were going. They knew what Mississippi did to people like them. They went anyway. James Chaney was 21 years old. He had grown up in Meridian. He knew every road they would drive. He had spent months going door to door in Neshoba County, sitting in living rooms, helping neighbors fill out the forms that voter registrars would find any excuse to reject, helping people claim a right that was already theirs on paper and completely out of reach in practice. Michael Schwerner was 24. Andrew Goodman was 20. They were both from New York, both Jewish, both raised in the tradition of tikkun olam, the obligation written into Jewish identity across centuries to repair the world, not to observe its brokenness from a safe distance, but to actually repair it. They had grown up in the immediate shadow of the Holocaust, a genocide that had ended fewer than 20 years before that June night. They knew in a way only a community that has lived it can know, where indifference to hatred leads, and who it finds next. So they went together to Mississippi, and they made a promise to the black congregation of Mount Zion Methodist Church. We will help you vote. We will come back. The Klan burned that church to the ground. They beat the congregation, and they waited, because the Klan knew about the promise. They knew what they did would bring the three men back. They were right. On the morning of June 21st, Chaney, Goodman, and Schwerner drove to that burned church to sit with the survivors, to look them in the eye, to honor their promise, to stand with them. On the drive back, a deputy sheriff named Cecil Price, a Klansman with a badge, pulled them over. He held them in jail for several hours while he made phone calls, and then he released them into the night. But then Sheriff Price went on to join two carloads of Klansmen who were waiting. Chaney, Goodman, and Schwerner's bodies weren't found for 44 days. They were buried in an earthen dam. James Chaney, the black man, was beaten before he was killed. All three were shot. Mississippi refused to charge anyone with their murder. But here's what their deaths did. The disappearance of two white Jewish men from New York forced a country that had been looking away to finally look. The FBI flooded Mississippi. The national press followed. Americans who had told themselves this was someone else's problem suddenly understood it was theirs. The freedom schools kept teaching. The voter registration drives kept going. Marchers crossed the Edmund Pettus Bridge. On August 6, 1965, 14 months after that blue station wagon left for Meridian, President Johnson signed the Voting Rights Act into law. Martin Luther King was in the room. Rosa Parks was in the room. They were there because of everything that had been paid to get to that moment. It was born in no small part from the type of promise these three young men kept. That law was gutted by the Supreme Court 8 weeks ago. But some of us, many of us, know what it costs to keep the light shining. We have not. We will not look away. Tonight's 11th hour is done. Tomorrow,